Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Allison. And thank you, Sustainable Solano, for having me here tonight to talk about personal permaculture or personal ecology. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. And so let's just go ahead and dive in. I think as Nicole presenced, right now is one of the most, what can we say, uncertain of times that we're in. There's a lot of amazing movement happening. A lot of us are engaged in all kinds of social change work, whether it's homeschooling our kids all of a sudden or, with Black Lives Matter and aligning ourselves with that, and environmental justice, climate change, everything from our small personal, just our personal selves and the greater global and national community. So doing this kind of work, I think it's just incredibly timely. We've always needed it, but it seems that we're in for a long haul. It seems like what we're looking forward to now is our new ways of being, new ways of seeing ourselves, new ways of understanding the natural world. And we're going to need to be creative and come up with some really good ways to make sure that our resource of self, right, to see ourselves as our greatest resources so that we can actually move through over a very long haul of a lot of change that we're going to be seeing and a lot of envisioning. So let's go ahead and start. Some of you are probably familiar with permaculture, and some of you might not be. So permaculture itself is a term that was coined by Bill Mollison a few decades ago. And he says that permaculture is just the act of working within nature rather than working against it. So looking at natural patterns, looking at natural cycles that are already present, and how can we take those natural patterns and those natural cycles and work within them, right, to create something that's thriving and sustainable and supportive. And then ecology, if we want to look at just what ecology and that definition is, it's really the relationship of living things with their environments. And that can be your internal environment or your external environment. So we're taking the concept of permaculture, working within our own nature, and ecology, working our living organism, working within our environment, external and internal, and taking it personally and applying it to ourselves. So as Nicole mentioned, I co-founded Vital Cycles, Creating Personal and Planetary Resistance, with my partner, Lydia Nielsen, who's been doing permaculture education for about 15 years. And for us, what's so fun is taking those natural patterns and seeing, whoa, look at how our bodies mirror these patterns in nature. Look at how we can learn how to tend ourselves by the way that we need to and want to tend to our garden, to our landscape. Even, maybe some of us just have a balcony or house plants, but how are we tending to the living things around us? And how can we turn that care and that tenderness onto ourselves right now, needing it as much as we do right now? So what I like to think about these, like really combining permaculture and personal ecology, is a form of radical self-care. So what we're talking about is a need for radical self-care of ourselves and our communities. And when I say self-care, I'm not talking about a spa day or getting a massage. In any way, most of those places are closing again anyway, right? So how can we create our own, what is our own self-care look like? I want to quote Audre Lorde, African-American feminist and large civil rights activist. And she said, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. So really seeing this act of caring for one's self is not a matter of being indulgent. It's a matter of actually preserving ourselves and thriving and supporting ourselves through the long haul. So what we're going to do is I've been working, as Nicole also mentioned, I have a master's in public health. I've been doing community health education for about 30 years. And I've been working with students at our community college for about 5 years in stress management. And I work with private clients as well. And so really identified 9 vital life skills. And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each of them. And as we do that, I'm going to give you information, and I want you just to be thinking about a couple of things. Well, first of all, let me say this. We're going to walk through them. I'm going to share my screen in a moment, and there'll be a mandala up of the 9 vital life skills. But what I really would love for you to do is not be looking at the screen. Okay, so just take a look at the screen. I believe you're going to be able to get this mandala emailed to you later. So just I see some of you are doing other things. So feel free while I'm talking to not be looking at your screen, just be making yourself comfortable. Hey, looking out the window, taking analog notes about what I'm saying and your questions as they come along, right? Also, if you can lay down, be as comfortable as you can. And then as you're looking at each skill, I want you to think of this, and I'll presence this throughout. How are you right now tending to this skill, right? So all the 9 skills together are going to support and sustain your resource of self, right? And you're wanting to slow, sink, spread, and save each of these life skills into your life. So look at how are you already doing this? And how might you not be? And even if it's not too much to think about, well, if you're not focusing or you're not tending to one of these life skills, why not? And maybe just jot down some notes. And if you are, what are the things in your life that are really helping you tend to that vital life skill? Okay, so we're going to look at it that way. So without further ado, and then also what I want to say for those of you, so permaculture as a practice, there are several principles. I believe there's 25, and I'm just going to be you'll hear me mentioning different permaculture principles throughout this presentation, just to kind of help you connect with the ways in which permaculture tends to the land or the landscape, and how we can take that same principle and apply it to our own personal landscapes. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, share my screen is not an option for me right now. Here it is. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. And like I said, during this time, feel free to just take a look at this, take a look at it now. So I'll just say, just to acquaint you with this diagram. So I like to work with circles, so as my partner, Lydia. So the center here is really what we're shooting for, right? Or not to use the word shooting, but this is our goal, right? An overall well-being. So there are 9 vital life skills, the first of which is over here. And honestly, it was just too hard to put 9 on this type of mandala, but also because breath is a skill that touches on all of the other vital life skills that we're going to be talking about today. And we'll start with breath. And then there's nourishment, movement, sleep, awe, nature, creativity, connection, knowing yourself, and boundaries. So notice how they're kind of going really deep within our bodies with the nourishment and going full circle around into sort of more the personal bits that aren't necessarily physical in our bodies, but present in our energy and the way we interact with our environments. Okay, so breath. We will start with. And again, what I want to also present is when you're thinking about this, think about, so if you are tending one of these really, really well, then you would think of yourself being here. And if it's something you need to work on, you might be a little bit out here. And just to make a mental note of that in your mind, or even put like on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the most tended to 5 being the least tended or less tended, just sort of feeling into where you're at with each of these vital life skills. So like I said, we're going to go ahead. So this is going to be up for a while, so you don't need to be staring at it. Just go ahead and listen to myself. If you want to make your own drawing of this, or if you can print out what was put in the chat, awesome. You can take notes on that as well. So breath, right? Breath is something we do every day, all the time, right? If we're not breathing, then we're not alive. And it's not only us that breathes, right? Everything breathes. I find it fascinating that seeds breathe. Before they're even planted and growing, seeds are breathing on a very low metabolic rate. They're exchanging, right, from inside and outside. Trees and plants, they breathe, right? So the connection here is everything is breathing. So when we're breathing, we're taking in oxygen into our lungs, and we're exhaling carbon dioxide. Trees and plants, through photosynthesis, right, they're taking in the carbon dioxide and exhaling, if you will, oxygen, which is so lovely, which is why all of our forests are also often called the lungs of our planet. What's interesting and what people don't know often is that when it's dark outside and plants and trees are not able to transpire or to photosynthesize, they actually act like us. They actually respirate. They take in oxygen and exhale carbon. They breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide at night when they're not being able to photosynthesize. So, oops. So let's just tune into our breath for a moment. So I want you to all take a really deep breath, as deep as you can. Okay. And exhale. You can make a sound if you like. I think you're all muted. And so just note, what rose? Did your chest rise or did your belly rise with that deep breath? Right? And you can just make a note of that to yourself. Did you feel your chest filling with air or did you feel your belly filling with air? So those are two different distinct types of breathing. And 75% of Americans breathe into our chest, which is called thoracic breathing. And then the 25% of us breathe into our bellies, which is called diaphragmatic breathing. And what we actually want to do, our goal is, so this is a key to our skill of breath, is to develop an ability to breathe into our bellies and take deep belly breaths. The thoracic breathing, the breathing into our chest, is the least efficient way of taking in oxygen, which we need for our bodies to function. And yet that's what a lot of people do. There are, for those of you who are breath practitioners out there, I'm sure there are some of you, yes, there are times when thoracic breathing, there are practices that can be helpful, but what we're wanting to work on for our daily breathing is to do belly breathing. So let's see, what I also want, so thinking of that, so we're wanting to practice breathing into our belly. So let's just take another deep breath. And really this time, really focus on breathing into your belly and feeling your belly fill with air, with oxygen. It's really your lungs. Having a straight spine is really good for that as well. And exhaling again. So here's what's very interesting. So when we're breathing, so here we are, we're all, can we say these uncertain times are a little bit stressful? So when we're stressed, breathing is one of the most powerful activities we can do to calm ourselves down and then to engage the part of our nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the relaxation response. So breathing slowly and breathing into our bellies is one of the most powerful things. So in permaculture, we would use the principle, the least change for the greatest effect, right? Just by changing the way we breathe, we can more easily respond to stress and recover from stress and engage and activate a relaxation response. So for breath practitioners, the average person also, we take about 7 to 10 breaths per minute. And in order to have the best stress or relaxation, I'll say, response, we want to bring that down to 5 to 6 breaths per minute. And there's a practice that I'm going to walk you through in just a moment. And what I want to also just point out is the power of our breath can be felt in taking our pulse and noticing that our pulse will actually quicken on an inhale and slow down on an exhale. So I want you to all try to do that with me right now. Okay, so I want you to take 2 fingers. Don't ever use your thumb for pulse. Take 2 fingers and you can either find your pulse in your neck or you can find your pulse on your wrist. Just feel into your pulse. Has everyone got it? I hope so. I can't see everyone. So I'm feeling my pulse. What I want you to do is we're going to take about 30 seconds, and I just want you to feel, as you're inhaling, if you can feel a quickening, and when you're exhaling, a slowing down. Okay, so we're just going to try that for a moment. So I want you to just notice, after a couple of breaths, if you feel a quickening in your pulse and a slowing with your inhale and a slowing down with your exhale. Okay. So I'm not going to be able to get a lot of feedback from any of you, but I'm hoping you could. We're going to do another little exercise in a second. So hopefully you felt that. I know for myself, maybe just raise your hand or give me, like, does anyone feel a difference on their inhale and their exhale? Anyone yet? No? Okay, well, this is a practice, right? So it's an interesting thing to practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called a 5-10-second breath. And the 5-10-second breath, we practice to bring our breaths down to 5 to 6 breaths per minute, which is going to more easily engage our parasympathetic nervous system and the relaxation response, which all of us can use right now. Okay, so what all we're gonna do is we're gonna inhale with 5 seconds and we're gonna exhale for 10. And the reason that we're exhaling the 10 is to feel that slowing. Right, so I'm hoping on these longer exhales now, some of you might be able to feel it. So here we go. I'm going to count the first 5 and 10, and then I'd like you all to just count on your own. Sound good? Okay. So, and closing your eyes is good. So just, you're going to breathe in through your nose if that's comfortable for you, and exhale through your mouth if that's comfortable for you. And you're going to still be feeling your pulse. Okay, so here we go. Everybody get ready. We're going to be breathing into our bellies. And here we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think I'll count it one more time. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now do 2 more cycles at your own pace. If the 5 and 10 seem too long for you, try 4 and 8. Okay, so we'll do 2 more of those at your own pace. Okay, I think that should have been time for 2. So just make a note to yourself. And I'll just tell you, my note is I don't notice the quickening of my pulse. I actually feel this, like, woo, I feel the slowing of my pulse. So as you move forward practicing this, and I just want to say this is one of the most powerful practice when I've been doing for about 6 years with students and clients. They say that, I do that 5-10-second breath before a Zoom call, during a Zoom call, after a Zoom call, before bed, when I wake up. It's something that can really bring us into a deep space. And you can be doing that breath in the middle of a meeting and no one knows you're doing it. No one has to know that you're engaging your parasympathetic nervous system and you're calming yourself down and bringing yourself to a different place. Okay, so really good exercise and practice to use if you're feeling triggered or you're just feeling exhausted or you just really need to ground into yourself. So that is breath. Okay, and just think to yourself now about breath as a skill, and just sort of note to yourself, do I have my breath fully dialed in? Am I doing my breath practice? Am I doing my belly breathing? Or do I need to focus on this a little bit more? And just, if you feel like it, on a scale of 1 to 5, just where are you at? So you can start to just make a little mental picture for yourself about where you're at with the vital life skills. Okay. So breath, I spend the most time on breath. I really want to always leave people with a really powerful practice that they can do after, and we're going to be going through. So as I go through the remaining 8, I'm going to be offering reflections, challenges, or actions that you can do for each of them to dial that skill in and to really hone that skill for yourself, with the goal being that you're all around kind of, the 1 or the 2 area, right? So that you're bringing that as close in as you can to support and sustain your resource of self through life and through this long haul that we have ahead of us right now. So the next one I want to focus is right down here, is nourishment. So nourishment as a skill, right? Notice I don't say eat, right? Because a lot of us eat, but we do not nourish ourselves. Also, there's a lot of ways to nourish ourselves that don't have to do with food, but are emotionally nourishing and physically nourishing and spiritually nourishing for us. But for this, we are going to focus on what we take into our bodies to nourish our guts and our gut microbiomes. So this is one of our favorite in Vital Cycles, one of our favorite parallels is between our gut microbiome and our soil microbiome. And we are not the only ones doing this. David Montgomery and Anna Bickley, they wrote a book called The Hidden Half of Nature. Highly recommend it. And they go absolutely directly into the parallels between our gut microbiome and our soil microbiome. And if you look on the back of multivitamin, many of the minerals in a multivitamin are the same minerals that the soil needs to also be healthy. So by taking these vitamins, hopefully we're just going to eat what we need and maybe hopefully don't need to take a multivitamin. So if we're eating, if we're nourishing ourselves and putting into our bodies what our bodies need for our gut microbiome to thrive, we're doing a great job. So the key to nourishment is as actually our enteric nervous system. And let's see. So our enteric nervous system is, maybe you haven't heard of it, but it starts at our esophagus and goes all the way down to our anus. It's 9 meters long and it weighs 1 pound. And it has the genetic diversity of our enteric nervous system is more diverse than just who we are as humans. Like there's so much going on in there. There are so many microbes, like millions, literally multitudes in our guts. So what we're wanting to do to get the best, so here we're going to use the permaculture principle of diversity. Diversity is pretty much also for all of these, but in particular, we're wanting to eat a diverse, have a diverse palate in order to have as many different kinds of gut microbes in our guts as we can. And the key to this, which is the key to healthy soil, in addition to different inoculants and things and different minerals you can add, is really organic matter, which is mulch. And what that is to us on a personal level is fiber, right? So I cannot say enough about fiber, right? What are high fiber foods? Where we're in a really great, we just came out of one of my favorite fiber times of raspberries and artichokes, like, whoa, tons of fiber, right? But check it out. Everyone's heard of fiber, right? But only 3% of us, only 3% of Americans get the recommended daily amount of fiber, or in permaculture terms, mulch, right? So for women, that's about 28 grams of fiber per day. And for men, it's about 35 grams of fiber per day. I highly recommend, just this is like a little challenge, is to really look at and think about, what did I eat? You know, cheese doesn't have fiber. On some days, I love my cheese and tortilla, right? But I'm not really getting a lot of fiber there, but I can add a lot of fiber by putting in greens and putting in beans and doing different things. So just sort of looking at what you're eating and what you're putting in your body and how can you enrich that fiber. And why do we want that to be? I mean, there's so much I could say about the enteric nervous system, but what I want to really impart upon people is that a healthy gut is so important for our overall emotional well-being, because now you might want to write this down. If you're not familiar with the hormone or the neurotransmitter serotonin, okay, serotonin is related to all types of anxiety. Well, it's actually for overall well-being. It's about pleasure, it's about motivation, it's about mood regulation. Serotonin, and serotonin is associated with the relaxation response. Okay, 95% of our body's serotonin is created in our guts, right? People always think it's in our brains. It's actually in our guts. So if we're looking at ourselves as a society, and we're looking at the type of diets that so many of us have, and we're looking at and seeing how much depression and anxiety and stress we all have, there are many people who would directly relate that to, in addition to many other things. I'm not a doctor, so I will not diagnose anyone, but I do think it's something that's often overlooked, that we are not nourishing ourselves to the point where we have the diversity that we need in our guts to be able to create the serotonin that we need. So in addition to 95% of the serotonin produced in our gut, 50% of dopamine is created in our gut. 50%. So dopamine is again related to overall well-being, mood regulation, as well as motivation. So this whole idea of you are what you eat, it's absolutely true, if for no other reason than our microbes are what we eat, and our microbes are there. So what's happening with the serotonin is there's actually a little microbe that at the same time triggers the production of the serotonin and also feeds on the serotonin. So it's just this lovely feedback loop, right? But if it's not existing in your gut microbiome because you're not eating enough fiber, you're not eating enough greens, you're not eating enough of what it takes to sustain that microbe, you're gonna could be low on serotonin and dopamine. So just incredibly important to for our overall well-being to nourish ourselves. So I guess for the skill for this one, to really up your game on the nourishment, is to really look at your fiber and look at how many colors that you eat per day, right? Are you getting a lot of reds and greens and purples? I mean, right now in California, the whole Bay Area, we're so lucky. We should be eating many, 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 many different colors, the whole rainbow spectrum every day. So are you able to do that? Okay. So if you have any questions about nourishment, we're going to move on to movement. I'm happy to dive more deeply into some of that at the Q&A time. So next we're going to go into movement. So movement, this is another one where people, we're looking at movement as a skill. And again, just like with nourishment, I didn't say eat. It's not about eating, it's nourishing. And movement isn't just about exercise. Movement is about parking further away in the Costco parking lot just so you get that little few extra steps, right? Movement is about hula hooping, right? Movement is about just stretching, right? So we're wanting to move. We're wanting to always be thinking about circulation, how our heart and how the blood is moving through our veins. So I don't know if any of you remember the Biosphere Experiment. I forget what year it was, but they built this big old biosphere dome and they tried to recreate life. And what they noticed is that the trees, they didn't thrive at all. They were all just kind of falling over and they couldn't figure it out. And then they figured out the biggest fail of the biosphere was they didn't create wind. There was no wind, and trees need wind. Trees need wind to build what's called their heartwood, right? That makes them strong and able to stand and withstand and thrive and function. So the scientists found out, wow, we can't have this biosphere if we don't have wind. And if we think of ourselves as those trees, we can think of movement is also sometimes challenge. Sometimes movement is our own personal wins, like our own personal things that help us become stronger. So movement is about that as well. So, and I love the other thing about the trees and the wind and the heartwood is that someone told me a while back that I'm not sure how many of you have fresh starts at your house, but I was told, when your little starts are starting out, whether they're in the ground or in their little pots, that in order to sort of build their strength and to make them grow and be more triggered, you actually just wash your hands, just gently flow your hands over the top of your starts, right? Especially if you're like, oh no, they're not getting in. I bought them before I dug the hole, right? You're wanting to still keep them strong and engaged, and just wiping your hand, creating that movement for them will help them become stronger and sustain before you can get them in the ground. And even once you get them in the ground, it's an excellent practice. Also, we believe because it just gets you in tune with your seedlings and your plants that you're growing and your food that you'll eventually be eating. So, so what is it about movement though? Let's think a little bit about, I don't want to use the word exercise, but just let's think about movement for us, for our own personal well-being. So what we want to shoot for is about 20 minutes a day, every single day, right? 20 minutes a day, every single day. 20 minutes because it's very highly unlikely that you'll get hurt. And I'm not talking about running. Walking is just as good. Right? There's so many ways. I can't see the chat, but I would just love to know all the different ways we can move. I'm a hula hoop fan, hula hooping, my daughters and I hula hoop, just getting that flow and that movement, getting our breathing, getting that to move up. So we're wanting to do that maybe 20 minutes every single day. Or for me, I'm as a menopausal woman, I've been told 3 times 10 minutes a day, right? Just to keep the metabolism going, just to keep building our strength and having our circulation and having that flow is so important. And the other really good thing about movement, which ties in really well with sleep, is that when we're moving, we're actually working through all the stress hormones like epinephrine or adrenaline or cortisol. Like we're moving through that, right? It's a type of detox, just like sleep, which we're about to talk about. And what I want to just mention very quickly before moving on to sleep is that with movement, it'll help us get actually tired. Because when we're using energy in our bodies, we are using a structure called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. And when we move, the phosphates move away from the adenosine, and adenosine is just left on its own. So just make a note about adenosine. It's ADENOSINE. But adenosine is key for sleep. And so the more we move and the more energy, the more of this structure we use for energy in our daily lives, the more actually tired we will actually be and the better sleep we may get. Okay, so let's check my notes, make sure. So movement, very important for all of us. And now sleep. So sleep is one of my favorites. Sleep is something, I've gone most of my life known as the person who needs very, very little sleep. And so sometimes too, I feel like sleep is like stress or busyness. It's like a form of, oh, I'm so awesome, I don't need to sleep at all, right? Or at least it is when I know some people are younger. But sleep is so essential, and sleeplessness is actually considered by the World Health Organization to be a Western epidemic, that we're just not getting enough sleep. And how much sleep do we need? Okay, so they've done studies, and I find this amazing. If I think about myself and how much sleep I have to catch up on, is less than 6 hours of sleep per night over time. And they've done this internationally across genders and nationalities. Less than 6 hours of sleep per night makes you 400 to 500 times more likely to die of cardiac arrest, right? Why is that? Because why are we sleeping? Why do we need to sleep? Again, sleep isn't just about being horizontal with your eyes closed, right? Like, how many of us are horizontal with our eyes closed many nights and we wake up and we're still super tired, right? Like, this is what happens. So sleep is more than that. And this is why sleep as a skill is brilliant, because there are so many things, again, small things we can do for the greatest effect around sleep. So sleep, I'm gonna spend a little extra time on sleep just because I find it so important. And I'll also say, just for all of us, that a lot of people don't know that 15% of fatal car crashes in the United States are caused by fatigued driving, right? So people die, I think, 1 hour from fatigued sleeping, or from fatigued driving. So not having enough sleep and getting behind the wheel. It's just as dangerous as being under the influence of alcohol or other drugs. So not a good idea to do fatigued sleep driving. If you're fatigued, try not to get behind the wheel or let someone else drive. So why do we sleep? Memory consolidation, cell regeneration and repair. This is when our learning happens. This is when things we've read get like chiseled in to our memories, when we're actually learning. It's also a form of movement detoxes you, but sleep detoxes you as well. And when you're sleeping, any of the cortisol or the adrenaline or any of the hormones that you've just sort of built up throughout the day, they get a chance to be worked through, right? So ideally, you're sleeping, so I'll say there's 5 stages of sleep, and we cycle through them every 90 to 110 minutes. And we want to have at least 4 90 to 110 minute sleep cycles from 1 to 5 throughout the night. Okay. And we like to think of sleep for our bodies as water on the landscape, right? So we can get these light little sleeps, which is, I think, what a lot of us are getting, which is why we wake up so tired in the morning, right? So that kind of light little sleep is like, morning drizzle or a foggy day, where it's kind of, there's, stuff's happening, but not really. And the plants, they can deal with that for a while, but what they're really needing what they're really needing on a regular basis is really a deep soak or some water infiltration to happen. So there's water deep down that they can access. And that's what we need. We are needing that deep sleep, which is a stage 5. It's when we have the rapid eye movement or REM sleep. And this is when a lot of our repair and our memory consolidation happens, right? And so for any of you that are students or you are on, maybe you stay up all night and you think, oh, this is great. Studies have shown that when you're not getting enough sleep and you stay up all night reading, you're going to retain so much less because you're not going to have that deep sleep over the period of time that's going to help take that learning in, take those memories and consolidate them into a body of knowledge that you own and have for yourself. So again, 5 stages every 90 to 110 minutes. We want to at least have 4 of those. So really just think about your own sleep patterns. And the other 2 things, I want to just mention 2 factors that affect sleep the most. One is our suprachiasmatic nuclei, which is right here. It's what helps us set our circadian rhythm. And then the other one is something called sleep pressure. Sleep pressure, check this out, is caused by the building up, which happens all day, this constant surge of adenosine. So if you remember, an adenosine is what's created when we use ATP, right? Cellular structure, we break down, get rid of the phosphates, we're left with the adenosine, and the adenosine from all of that, from the energy we've used, is what is creating our sleep pressure. So on days when we can get some good movement, again, just walking, stretching, just burning the energy, that the ATP that we have, we're more likely to be truly tired at the end of the day and really able to sleep. Another really great reason to move our bodies a lot more. And the suprachiasmatic nuclei, what I want to say about that is it's right at the crossroads of our optical nerves. So our optical nerves switch sides, and there's this place right there, and there's the suprachiasmatic nuclei. And that nuclei, it's are super sensitive to light. So I'm sure you've all heard it before, but that is the reason why your challenge around sleep is it's so much better for all of us to turn off our devices and bright overhead lights 2 to 3 hours before we want to go to sleep. Okay, so just think about that. I know you're all like, oh my God, Anne. And I do not do that every night myself, but when I need a good night's sleep, yes, I'm going to do that. And think about it. If you have the opportunity to sleep outdoors or go camping, think about how really good you sleep when there's really no lights around, right? Because our suprachiasmatic nuclei says, awesome, it's dark, it's time to sleep. And then the suprachiasmatic nuclei triggers the release of melatonin. And I just want to put this little fact in about melatonin. Melatonin does not make you tired. Melatonin triggers your body to fall asleep. So that if sleep were the race, okay, sleep's the race, melatonin is the pistol at the starting line. Melatonin is the boom, go. And then your body starts to slow down. Our breathing goes down, our heart rates go down, right? So melatonin, so that's why people, I know a lot, I'm just mentioning this because a lot of people use melatonin to put themselves to sleep. And so the key to the melatonin is to take it about 2 hours before you actually want to become tired. And then lower the lights, turn off your devices if you can. Okay, so sleep as a skill, right? So the things that we want to do is we want to turn off our devices 2 to 3 and bright lights 2 to 3 hours before we sleep. And we want to get at least 4 cycles through all the 5 stages that are 90 to 110 minutes. So that's your challenge with sleep, to really hone in that skill and wake up feeling really good. Oh, because if you don't get enough sleep, check it out. The adenosine levels that built up the whole day, if you don't get enough sleep to make the adenosine levels go all the way down, you start off with the adenosine levels already really high. So if you drink a lot of caffeine, you'll stay awake, but the adenosine will keep building. And then if you don't get enough sleep, you'll wake up as tired as you were the evening before. Just a note. Okay, so if you have any questions about sleep, write them down. We'll be answering any afterwards. And again, just thinking on a scale of 1 to 5 with movement and sleep, like how dialed in do you have sleep and movement, right? With 1 being like, I'm on it, and 5 being like, oh, I had no idea. I think I need to work on that. So on nature, on nature as a skill, a lot of people, some of our students are like, I don't have to have nature as a skill. You know what? I mean, and it's not. So the skill around on nature is nature for one, just the skill around that is just saying to yourselves multiple times, maybe even daily, I am nature, right? I don't have to go connect. I do have to go out and be with it and be silent and slow down, but I am nature, right? The skill of seeing oneself, right? That we have our own heartwood that we need to build. We have our own cycles that we need to work with and not against, right? So, and then there's awe. And what the key to awe is that awe, I would love it if we were in person, I would ask you all, what do you think awe is? So awe is an emotion, and it's a very unique and profound emotion, right? Something I think that also gets taken for granted. And awe is not the same as joy or happiness or even elation. Okay, awe is its own profound emotion that affects us incredibly, and is also a great reducer of stress. So awe, there's two essential aspects to awe. Okay, one is this idea of vastness. So it's an experience where you feel a lot of spaciousness and vastness, especially around time. You know, time just seems to slow down or stop completely, right? And this sense with the vastness that there's something that's larger than you, right? Larger than your own experience of the world. So those two things. So a lot of times I feel happy and I feel joyful and I feel elated, but I don't have a sense of vastness. And the second essential aspect for awe is a need for accommodation. So accommodation of what, right? So the accommodation is that it's an experience where you have to actually adjust your cognitive schema, which is like your mental models of how you see the world. So you have to accommodate, you haven't had an experience, and now you have to say, whoa, based on that experience, I have to rethink the way I perceive things, and my mental models, or they're called cognitive schema, which you don't have to remember that term. I like it. That's why a lot of experiences that induce awe, people say, oh, that was mind-blowing, or that was earth-shattering, because it's something that literally just kind of knocks you off center and makes you have to kind of come back and see things differently. So really beautiful. And I think it is, or I know that it is a skill that a lot of us don't even realize we need. So really the skill in finding the awe. And it can be a sunset, right? It can be maybe the birth of a baby, you know, like just to witness it. It can be so many different things. So the skill around awe and nature is a practice that some of you might be familiar with. And this is called a sit spot. Okay. And the sit spot is really literally going out into a natural place. You know, I've had students ask me, oh, can I be in the back of my pickup truck or whatever? No, you can't be you're touching the ground. If you can be barefoot, if you're comfortable being barefoot, that's great too. But you're outside and it's quiet. And hopefully, you know, I love dogs, but you wouldn't want to necessarily bring your dog around with you, because what you're wanting to do is tune into nature. And you want to do this sit spot for a minimum of 20 minutes. And that 20 minutes is representative of something called baseline. And baseline is how long it takes for the natural beings around us to say, oh, okay, that's a human, but the human's just chilling, so we're going to come back now. And you will literally hear the insects start up again, the birds start up again. Okay, so the skill and the practice around on nature is trying to at least once a week. I mean, I would say every day, but let's start, if you're, you know, depending on where you're at, you know, you can just start with once a week, say 30 minutes to just go out in nature without a device, without a friend, without even a journal, to just sit and observe. Observation is another one of the very key permaculture principles. Okay, so on nature. Now we're going to move to creativity. So creativity when we're stressed. So again, I'll just take a moment, think about how dialed in you are with on nature. Any questions, just jot them down. So creativity, I'm going to say, is one of the very first things to go. I'm sure you've all heard the story about how you ask a bunch of kindergartners who in the room is an artist, and like all of them raise their hand, everyone. And then you ask a bunch of adults and there's like, I don't know, kind of, right? So creativity isn't just about being an artist, right? Creativity for right now, in this time, in our culture, in this country, the social transformation that's happening right now requires us all to be creative, right? To really think of new ways. What's the new form of what's the new normal going to look like? What are our lives going to look like moving forward? What can we envision? How creative can we be, right? And for this, I'd like to presence the permaculture principle of the problem is the solution, right? Let's look at what are the problems we're facing and how can those problems actually be the solution to something, okay? So creativity is about, again, moving from our own accommodation, like just changing it up. And Donella Meadows, she wrote a book called Systems Thinking. I don't have it next to me to show you, but she talks about different ways of creating social change. And the top one, it's around creativity. So it's about shifting the way we see our paradigms that we're living in. And Donella Meadows says that the ultimate way to affect change in our society is to actually transcend our paradigms. Okay, and in order to transcend our paradigms, we need to get into our creativity, right? And if you're not going to go there right away, no problem, because what's even better is all of us who are during this time of the pandemic and shelter in place, we're being creative in our gardens, right? We're using on-site resources to create garden beds that we never had before. We're being very creative in all kinds of ways. So we'll just say that creativity, they say also, which is why I told you all, don't have to be staring at the computer screen tonight. For my students and my clients, I always say, if you're going to be taking in information, do something creative while you're doing it, right? So I tell students, doodle, knit, sew, bring in something just to be using multiple parts of your mind. And they actually find that people who are doing some sort of creative activity while they are listening to a lecture retain more of the information in the lecture than people who are taking copious notes. So sort of the challenge or the reflection around creativity is just to think of where are the parts in your life that you're being creative. Are you creating music? Are you writing? Are you making poetry? Are you cooking differently? Are you just putting in new spices and putting new ingredients in together? All of that helps us. It's all about focus. The creativity is all about focus, because we can't create a lot if we don't have the focus. So creativity / focus as a skill. Okay. Any questions on that? We can dive in further. So the next one, so we have connection, know, and boundaries. And these are connected, I'll say, these life skills. So connection, I say to connection, and a lot of people think, well, but I'm an introvert, and that's actually totally fine. You don't have to be an extrovert to have connection, right? So connection, you really all of us just need one person, right? Nature does the connection thing awesome, right? Nature is trying to connect. We have the mycorrhizal fungi under the soil that we can't even see, that's communicating with the trees and the plants and facilitating all of this communication that's happening. And so they don't need to spread themselves too thin, but just having a connection with even one person. I want to say that in general, I think both men and women, I'm not generalizing, it's actually research that supports this, that men are more likely to say that they do not even have one confidant in their lives, and not even having one. So if you have one, that's awesome, right? If you have more, great. Again, don't spread yourself too thin. But not having any friends or even one confidant is related to mortality. And they're finding that having no friends is as dangerous to your health as smoking 1 pack of cigarettes per day, right? So if you're a person and you're feeling like that, then, if you're feeling like, oh, I really do need someone to talk to, think about, and we can talk about it if there's questions and answers about this, about ways of just finding one confidant, or if you already have your one confidant, other ways of connecting. And this goes into know. Connecting can also just be, what did I want to say? Oh, connecting. We are social beings. So that's why isolation is a form of punishment, right? So, and connecting right now during shelter in place. So I like to say spatial distancing, right? Not social distancing. We need to spatially distance, but we need to have each other. We need to see and feel what's happening with other people. So the the challenge or the reflection on this is just to take note of your confidants, of the people in your tightest bit of your circle. How might that expand, or how is it just perfect for you right now as it is? Okay, we can come back with more about connection if you have questions. And to know, so knowing yourself. So this is an ongoing, knowing ourselves, I think, is one of the most important things that we often don't do. So I like to ask people, can you answer the prompt, who I am, right? Who I am, not who am I, but who I am. Can you answer that in 12 words or less? And I am doesn't count, okay? How would you answer that? Right, and this is a skill, this is a practice you can do after this tonight. So really, who I am, this is who I am in 12 words. If you want to take longer, that's fine, because we're not going to meet again about this, but there's just that little challenge there. What supports me? How do I thrive? What are my triggers? And more importantly, what path am I on? Okay, where do I want my energy to flow? Right, and am I letting it get there? And I'm going to use the parallel of pruning. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with pruning a tree, or even tomatoes are one of my favorite things. I call it snapping. If you don't snap your tomatoes, you're going to end up with this, like, all of these, crazy tomato plants, and, kind of barely can find the tomatoes, and maybe there's not so many, but by just snapping, there's little growths that come up in, like, to the armpit of the tomato, and you snap those off, then it allows the energy to, instead of helping this one grow, it sends the energy out into the other branches. And so it helps the tomato plant, focus on the fruit, right? It's the same with trees. When you're pruning a tree, you're wanting to say, oh, okay, let's see, I want the energy to go this direction, because I want all of these branches aren't going to make fruit, but these that are making fruit, how can I direct the energy to those? Or basil, pinching the little, before they start to flower, pinching those off so you get big bunches of basil and big leaves instead of all these flowers. So knowing yourself is a lot about knowing, where am I in overwhelm? Where am I putting all of my energy unnecessarily, right? Where can I prune, pinch, or snap in order to direct more of my energy to where I want it to go? And what fruits am I actually looking towards? Okay. So this is all about knowing ourselves, being on a path, and really creating this. And the pruning, the pinching, and the snapping, it's not about letting go. It's about purposefully, intentionally directing your energy flow, because those things are going to grow back, right? You have to prune every year. You got to pinch all the time. You got to keep snapping your tomatoes, right? So it's an ongoing process, and it's all part of knowing ourselves and where we want our energies to go. And the last one, the last vital life skill. So the skill around that is really answering that question, who I am, for yourself. And we would move on from there. And really asking yourselves, where do I want my energy to flow? Are there places where I'm just all over the place? And then looking where you can prune. It's one of my favorite and most needed practices. So our last one is boundaries. So people have such a thought about boundaries. Often they think boundaries are a wall, right? Boundaries are a wall. Okay, well, boundaries don't have to be a wall. Think of a boundary in the permaculture sense of edges. Okay, so edges in a landscape, they're the most diverse. There's the most stuff happening. This can also be the edge of a forest before field. So yeah, there's kind of a boundary there, but it's really like an ecotone. So if you think of an ecotone as the overlap of two other entities or communities. So setting a boundary is just being really clear, because now you've gone through connection and you know yourself, and your boundaries are what's okay and what's not okay. Right? Because sometimes we can feel like everybody's out there to mess with us, right? But what we need to do for the best boundary is assume that everyone is doing the best they can, right? And so we need to be clear about what works for us and what's okay and what's not okay. And then these boundaries are really just helping us be in our integrity and being as generous as we can with ourselves and with other people. And Brené Brown has done a lot of work on boundaries, and she has said something to the effect of, the most generous people that I know are the most boundaried people. because these people that are the most boundaried, they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of. They don't feel like they're giving too much. They know that they're giving exactly what they can give, and the people around them are seeing these boundaries and working within them around what's okay and what's not okay. So I guess to get this skill really dialed in is to really think about what's okay and what's not okay for you. And I'm going to use Brene Brown's idea of big, and it's what boundaries are needed to be in place, what boundaries for me to stay in integrity and make the most generous assumptions. Okay, so what boundaries are needed to be in place for me to stay in integrity and make the most genuine assumptions about everyone, including myself. Yeah. So again, boundary, not a wall. Boundary like a beautiful hedgerow, right? Boundary like Maximilian sunflowers. If you're all familiar with that, like the deer don't like them. So you can actually create a little boundary of beautiful sunflowers that help prevent the deer. So what sort of beautiful sunflowers can you plant, right? Metaphorically, to prevent something from coming in that you really don't want, right? So that's our last skill. Sorry, I'm a little after 7, Nicole. But I would love to hear any questions that you all have, or any reflections, insights. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Thank you. That was fabulous. I think everyone was mesmerized. We weren't chatting. We were just in the presence, and I am a copious note taker.
Oh my goodness, look at you.
Wow. Really fabulous. Oh, it's incredible. So if you have a question,
oh, beautiful,
raise your hand. Yeah. Raise your hand, and I will take you off mute. And I think Brenda had her hand raise, but I think that was when you first said something about raising. So let's just see. Brenda, I'm going to unmute you. Brenda, you there?
Hi, I did make a mistake.
You did. That's fine. Brenda's
raised her hand, and I went, I did. And I went,
that's okay. Brenda's one of our food forest keepers.
Hi.
So I will then mute you. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
All right. Sandra. Might take a minute. There you go. I hear you. Sandra?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Sandra.
So I have a question on the sleep.
Yeah.
So I have a Fitbit, and I sleep with it, and it gives me all this information about how I sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And what's confusing is, okay, it says the deep, when I'm sleeping in the deep mode, that's the shortest of all the time when I'm asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the light is the longest, and then the awake and REM, they're always anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half long. So
that's interesting. So what happens throughout the night is when you first fall asleep, you spend more time in the light sleep stages than you do in the deep sleep, but you are going through 1 through 5 every 90 to 110 minutes.
Okay.
But then as the night wears on and you're sleeping longer, if you are maintaining and you're not getting woken up like me by my cat or my children, whatever, and then that sends us back. We don't it's not like a train, right? Then you get back on and you got to start all over again. And so at the later part of the night, so the early morning time, we're actually spending more time in our deepest phase of stage 5 sleep and REM sleep. So it sounds like you might be staying in the less deep mode longer.
Yeah.
How many hours you're getting?
It varies from 6 to almost 8.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with the Fitbit app for looking at sleep, but that's super interesting. And I'm making a note for myself to look into how that app, I'm thinking that it's monitoring your heart rate, right? So when you're in deep sleep, you're in a state of somewhat like a state of paralysis, right? A lot of your muscles. Right. So when you're in your sleep, that's when you're like kicking and moving your arms and doing all that.
Yeah, I move around a lot. Okay. Yeah.
Your mind is sort of relaxing, but your body is still able to be guided by your nervous system. Whereas when you're in the deeper sleep, everything is calming down, and you're having you're having dreams. And I do believe people dream even if they don't remember them. So it sounds like
Oh, okay.
you're spending more time in the lighter sleep.
Yeah. Okay. And that's okay?
It's okay. I need
Okay.
to, again, I want to, I'm happy to get back to you on that. I just,
Okay.
I didn't know the
Okay.
algorithms for Fitbit. I didn't even know that they could do that. So
Yeah. Okay.
really interesting question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra.
Oh, wait, someone's holding up. Kimber.
We've got it just says iPhone, so I'm gonna unmute iPhone. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Can you, am I on?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you, Anna. It's such a fascinating topic tonight. I have so many questions, but I think I just want to follow up on the sleep question earlier. Anna, what do you think of sleep podcasts to help you sleep at night, to help you prompt to have a good night's sleep?
Okay, so I'm going to say that a lot of people love them. And I will say that my own personal practice is I try to do everything as much as I can, not on a device, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's, so it's, I like to say it's a devicing challenge, right? So how much can we device? So I know that they're really powerful for a lot of my students and a lot of the clients I've worked with individually. And I do believe that the less time that we're on a device, so, even if you had something like, even I feel like something that creates the sound of waves or something that's far away from you and you're not getting EMFs right close to you, and I don't know, people have different beliefs around that, the better off and the more soundly that we will sleep. That is what I would say. That's my personal, again, I'm not a doctor, and I know a lot of my students use that. And I find that, and I'll just say, for the people that I know and the students I've worked with, that those that really have been really good at the devicing and cutting down on their time on their devices do sleep better. Yeah.
How do they do that? If they device, not use the device, and or like you said, I don't know.
The invitation there is to really try to just get off your computer, your iPhone, your laptop, even your Kindle, even though it is a different type of light, 2 hours, up to 2 hours or 3 hours before you go to sleep. And I think that all of us are so addicted to our devices. I will say, honestly, I do not do that every night. But when I'm feeling like I really have to sleep tonight, like last night for today, I'm like, I need to be really rested. I need to be right on. So I'm going to do it. So I internalize that and make it a focus for the nights where I need to get a good amount of sleep.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Great questions. Yeah.
Is it me? Am I on?
Yes, Sandra, you're off.
Oh, okay.
Mute.
Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, Nicole is still on mute. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I have another question regarding. I have my grandson. He doesn't like to go to sleep. He's 7, and usually we just let him, go to sleep watching his tablet or whatever. So, in trying to take off all these things for at least 2-3 hours prior, would you suggest reading or playing games or something like that with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Reading,
Okay.
playing games. So here's the deal with I'm just going to go a little bit into the suprachiasmatic nuclei again. So the suprachiasmatic nuclei is measuring the light around us all the time, right? And it's especially sensitive to blue light. And the blue light, even if there's the blue light blockers that people have, they don't really work. I have never seen a scientific study that says that they actually work. I've seen only sites that work that are selling or promoting the blue light blockers. So that's why, especially for young children, there's also, it just impacts their ability to also just calm down. So if there's a fun way to read books or even do sometimes I'm going to look for the resources for you around kids. Like there's breath exercises and singing things that you can do before bed that help them calm down and just bring their nervous system to a more relaxed place.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. I think I can't see your name because this
Sandra.
Sandra? Okay. No, I saw Sandra's name. There's a woman here.
So we're going to take one more.
Dora? I think yeah.
Karen.
Hello.
Karen.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm speaking
Hi.
from Dunedin from New Zealand.
Oh, great.
And actually, I'm very grateful to my daughter. She enrolled me for this course. So I would like to thank very much to Anne. I think it was a very interesting, speech, and I really enjoyed it. And I want to ask you, so I noticed that your mandala or your circle, so the left part of it, it's more linked to physiological needs like nutrition and so on, where the right part has more with maybe spirituality and so on. So while I allocated some marks, as you suggested, in nutrition and nature and so on, I got quite low marks, which are positive. In the second half, I realized that my marks were quite high, as in I have to work a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I also noticed that the right part of the circle, it's quite interconnected. So maybe knowing who you are, you could establish better boundaries and so on.
Right.
I was wondering, I feel that my half part, as I said, getting lower marks, I would like to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest? What would you suggest? It's a very vast and complex question, but I was thinking, what do you think, how could I work a bit more and, get some better marks in the second half?
And so you're talking about from creativity.
Yes, and yeah.
Oh, it's such a huge,
Yeah.
I think that really, I think the fact that you're curious about it and that you're wanting to have the lower, you wanting to have those more dialed in is the best. A lot of people, they're like, whatever, this is just the way I am. So the fact that you have that genuine curiosity around wanting those to be more dialed in is wonderful. And, without knowing you so much, I'd have to know you a little bit better to give you some ideas. And I think the fact that I would go into answering the question, the who I am in 12 words or less would be a really good start. And to really talk to, again, if you have family and friends, just sort of getting into the practice of, and maybe it's just with your daughter, right? Yeah. And then looking at, so let's see, we have the creativity. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with you more in detail, just without knowing you so much. I think for me, what I usually say for all of those is, again, that genuine curiosity is the key, right? And the more that you can look into what you think your blockages are around that. So the other thing I invited you all to do in the beginning is to look at where you are, like on 1 to 5, and then sort of note down, well, what is facilitating myself having this skill really dialed in, and what is inhibiting this skill from really being dialed in? And then looking at those things. And from there, you might find some things that you need to prune, pinch, or snap in order to get those skills to be more honed in.
Yeah, I think I'm very grateful, even having the 4 keywords, that I will reflect much more. And I think, things will start revealing as you reflect more and realize where it's missing.
Excellent.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your answer.
So much. Thank you.
You were talking about the going out to the nature and sitting there for 20 minutes to 30 minutes. That was, that's just to get, what was that for? That's to find like an inner peace type thing? Is that?
It's really tuning into all of our senses, actually. Just in the interest of time, I didn't go into that. But the idea of going and doing the sit spots is to really tune in to, what do I smell? What do I hear? What do I see? What do I taste? right? Really engaging all of our senses. So observing our internal environments, our internal surroundings, and to be fully open to the external environment. So you can't imagine the things that you see when you're sitting quietly in nature by yourself without a dog or a phone or even a journal, right? Like one day I saw this spider, and it was walking in this really weird way. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I looked at it, and it was 2 ants carrying this massive spider. And so the spider was dead, actually, but the ants made it look alive. But it was just this beautiful thing that I happened to catch. I mean, I found it beautiful. Just something I happened to catch because I was sitting still and just really noticing everything around me. So, and the baseline, if that's what you were asking about, is it takes 20 minutes for the natural surroundings to kind of calm down again.
Wow, this was so fabulous. Thank you so much. This was just more than I even expected. It's really incredible. So thank you.
It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
so much
for joining us.